So impressed by Odysseus's heroics, Circe would invite him to her bedchamber,
She said, "Hey,
with the two
that was
having a
kinda...
son together named Telegonus,
Oh!
remaining on the
Whoa,
island.
whoa, 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 whoa.
Goo goo gaga.
What's good, YouTube? We are back with some more epic content. This time we're watching the actual story that Epic is based on, because I don't know nothing about the Odyssey. That's why I was confused when I was getting into Epic, because I was like, what's going on here? Like, I don't even know these characters, but hey, I'm having a good time. And then after I was done, motherfuckers was like, oh, that stuff, it ain't even like accurate. They just kind of took their own liberties. So I saw this video pop up, the Odyssey explained in 25 minutes. So we gonna hop right in and see all the different stuff that's, you know, that Epic did differently than the real story. Like, for instance, the only thing I know is different was I remember hearing that Poseidon never met Odysseus in the actual Odyssey. So like, it's gonna be stuff like that. But we gonna hop in this. And then also, yeah, y'all better go and subscribe, because I checked. Look, y'all be coming over here watching the videos. I appreciate that. Y'all even be liking, which if you ain't been liking and you hearing this, go ahead and start liking these videos. But a lot of y'all don't even be subscribed. I checked my analytics like a couple days ago, and it said like, what was it? It said like 80-90% of my viewers aren't even subscribed. Go subscribe. Go support the channel. I'd appreciate it very much. That way you know when I'm live. Hit that bell icon. All, you know, the whole 9 yards. I appreciate the support, but we about to get started. The life guide. Oh.
Hello, YouTube. This is Kratos from critically acclaimed series God of War. Hop over to the Twitch now, or you're gonna get the Zeus special.
Yeah, we do these reactions over on Twitch. We also be gaming on Twitch, but go head over to the Twitch, support, and because we be doing these reactions every Monday and shit. So I appreciate any support. Yeah. Yosuke, I heard Greek mythology. Yes, I'm finally watching this video because, again, I watched Epic. Epic was fire, but I never actually like learned anything about the Odyssey. So this video popped up. It was like the Odyssey explained in 25 minutes. So I was like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and watch that so we can see the real story and the differences and all that. But I hope you're doing well. Welcome in. Also, Cryptic, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Welcome in, Scuff Village. Hope you find it cozy home here. I'm crying. I didn't even mean to make the TTS on thing. Kratos is just the most threatening one. Yeah, he I assumed you picked Kratos because of the Greek shit. But yeah, we gonna see what's going on, what actually happened. Because again, I've only heard that Poseidon never met Odysseus in the actual story. I also heard people saying that like Odysseus was messing around with Calypso in the actual story, whereas in the Epic he stayed faithful or something like that. I don't know. We gonna see. Enough of me yapping. He was indeed.
800 years ago, a blind poet known as Homer would produce 2 epic works. The Iliad would tell the tale of the Trojan War, where a great city was conquered by one of the most devious plans in history.
Yeah, I don't know shit about the Iliad.
With the Trojans having been defeated,
most interpretations he cheated with her and Circe.
Would now turn his attention to
I did hear about that
with
too.
His second epic, the Odyssey,
where it was like he was messing with Circe to save his men or something.
Having constructed the Trojan horse, Odysseus had ensured victory against all odds and proved his reputation as the most cunning of the Greeks. But throughout it all, Odysseus only longed for one thing: to finally return to his homeland of Ithaca, where he could be reunited with his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. But while his family awaited his return, Odysseus's journey home would take 10 long years, during which he and his crew would have to face the most terrifying creatures known to man. A journey so epic, its tale would be told for thousands of years. This is his story.
All right. He cheats, he killed a baby, and he's bad at direction. He killed the baby in Epic
ruled
too.
over the Greek
I mean, he
island
wanted
of
to raise
Ithaca,
it.
but had spent 10 long years fighting in Troy to retrieve the Spartan queen Helen. But with his mission now complete, Odysseus looked to travel back to his homeland.
Why were they warring
where
with
his
people
wife
so
Penelope
far?
and his son Telemachus awaited. Gathering his fleet of ships on the Trojan shores, Odysseus would set sail, relieved to be finally returning home. With Troy in ruins, they would first head north to look for supplies, landing
Helen
on the
was
shores
kidnapped.
of Ismara, home to the Siconians.
Okay, real quick. Helen, because they trifling. I remember Helen being mentioned briefly in like a previous stream. Helen was supposed to be the queen of some shit. I don't remember. I know I hate this man. Hey, look, he had a whole emotional song because he didn't want to kill the baby, but then, and when I said, hey, why doesn't he just raise the baby? Because that's what he said he wanted to do. Everybody was like, oh, well, the gods don't want that because the gods don't. So is that really on him though? I don't know. I just know the gods be having these absolutes and shit. You might need to read about the Iliad. So what, do I need to do the Iliad first before the Odyssey? Or can I just run this? How about it? We can run the Odyssey and then is there like the Iliad explained in 25 minutes? And because I know like they're implying the Iliad was first because it's about the war, right? Y'all didn't have to read this in school? Hell nah. Listen, when I was in school, the only Greek mythology shit we really covered was like Percy Jackson type shit. Well, actually no. We covered Greek mythology for a bit, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't like these type of stories. I don't remember what we covered, but but while we were covering it, we were also just reading Percy Jackson and shit. But I just can't remember what we actually covered in the class. But it wasn't very long. It was very brief. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Welcome in Scufffield. Hope you find a cozy comfy here. I had to memorize the beginning in Latin. It had a separate story altogether, but it does add context. Have you not watched Troy? How many? Look, y'all know the answer to those questions. TLDR, Cersei angry and bitter. Did I mention crazy? And Calypso is just bad circumstances, I guess. My English teacher just had us summarizing magazines and doing book essays. Or at least summarized every 2 pages. Hi Haley, welcome in. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Oakland and Scuffville. Hope you find a cozy, comfy here. I was taught Norse mythology in my school. I don't think we went over. We definitely went more over Greek than Norse.
In short, Helen was considered the most beautiful woman in the world. She was the wife of King Menelaus from Sparta. She was stolen away by Paris, a prince from Troy.
Why did he say that shit like he was really just about to like tell me a tale? Y'all hear how he fucking the way Helen was considered the most beautiful woman in the world. Like he was over here about the whole I narrate like okay, Kratos. Okay, Kratos. We see how you was over here telling stories to Atreus. Okay. That is so funny. Iliad is the Trojan War. Odyssey is one dumb man taking several years to return from said war. Got you. Kratos is old. We was gonna get a whole screen transition. Yeah, that was funny as hell. But okay. They kidnapped Helen. I don't know how they got her ass when they all the way over there in Ithaca. They all the way down there. But okay.
Conians, a Thracian tribe who had fought on the side of the Trojans. Gathering the supplies they needed, Odysseus and his men would find themselves under attack from the Siconians, but overwhelmed by such a large tribe, they were forced to retreat back to their ships, with their journey soon resuming. Heading south, they would sail round the shores of Greece, before heading north towards Ithaca. But as they neared home, a great storm erupted, blowing them off course and towards the island of the Lotus Eaters.
They was just going everywhere. These them little baby thingies in the epic. They was like, oh, come eat the fruit.
Odysseus and his crew would leave their ships, soon asking the island's inhabitants for help and directions.
I just remember he was boating everywhere and causing them
give
mess.
them directions, they would offer something instead, the fruit of the island's many lotus trees. Unknown to Odysseus, the lotus fruit contained a powerful drug that made those who consumed it fall asleep, forgetting their past and wanting to stay on the island forever.
Oh.
As several of his crew began to fall down around him, Odysseus would realize the sinister nature of the fruit,
He said, oh, hell no.
quickly forbidding its consumption. Rescuing his sleeping companions, he would carry them to their ships, making a quick escape and heading out to sea. But having been blown off course, Odysseus and his fleet had been at sea for longer than expected.
In Epic, the island with the Cyclops was where the Lotus Eaters was, right?
Island they came
but
across,
in this case, they just went to a whole nother island.
Shepherd's camp in the distance, with Odysseus hand-picking a small group of warriors to accompany him. Taking several cases of wine to trade, the hungry crew were overjoyed when they saw large supplies of cheese and meat within a cave next to the shepherd's flock.
Sail West, I don't think they were on the same island. Because he had a little Lotus Eater on his shoulder when they went in the thing. So that's why I thought.
Polyphemus, a son of Poseidon, who sealed the entrance with a giant boulder. Ignoring Odysseus's cries that he was there to trade, Polyphemus would grab two of the warriors, crushing them each in his fists before eating their remains.
Pilates!
He would then leave the cave, returning each morning and evening to feast on what remained of the terrified crew. Knowing the odds were stacked against him yet again,
they dropped like
Odysseus
flies.
would devise a cunning plan to escape. Realizing he couldn't overpower Polyphemus, he would offer the Cyclops the wine he had brought with him to help wash down the taste of his friends. With the Cyclops soon falling down,
so he gave him wine after the fact.
For Odysseus's name in order to thank him for the gift, but instead of giving his true name, Odysseus would insist that he was called Nobody. Thanking Nobody, Polyphemus would soon fall asleep, where Odysseus would begin to sharpen a wooden stake he had found in the cave. Approaching the sleeping giant, he would plunge the stake deep into his eye, blinding the Cyclops, but making sure not to kill him, as the boulder blocking the cave's entrance would still have to be moved. Polyphemus would scream out in agony, a scream so loud that Cyclopses from across the island would rush to the cave. Calling out to Polyphemus, they would ask what's wrong, who's killing you, but Polyphemus would shout back, Nobody is killing me. Nobody. It was just as Odysseus had planned, with the Cyclopses soon leaving in confusion. But while Polyphemus was now blind, there was no way for the men to move the giant boulder blocking the entrance, with Odysseus coming up with yet another plan. When Polyphemus went to move the boulder the next morning to let his sheep out to graze, he would feel each of the animals as they passed to check it wasn't one of the humans.
Yeah, because I was wondering how they're supposed to get out. And
would each tie themselves to the bottom of the sheep, allowing them to pass by undetected.
They was crawling under the sheep.
Their ships, they would manage to escape the island. With Polyphemus,
well, imagine they didn't have enough sheep. The rest of the guys in there just gotta die, I guess.
Would make a costly mistake. Overcome by his achievement, he would reveal to the Cyclops that his name was not Nobody, but instead Odysseus, the famous hero
Odysseus!
of the Trojan War. Unknown to Odysseus, this would allow Polyphemus to give the name of his attacker to his father Poseidon, the god of the sea.
So, yo, Dad!
Who, in revenge for his
he
son's
took my eye!
Would curse Odysseus to lose all his crew in his coming travels, and wander the seas for 10 long years, before he could set foot on his homeland.
Why this in specific? We've been watching Epic for like weeks. What's going on, though?
Unaware of the curse Poseidon had placed upon him, Odysseus and his crew would land on the floating island of
Wait, so
Aeolia.
like,
After
so did he say that like he told his dad what happened, and then he was like, all right, I'm gonna put a curse on him, bro. Don't worry, I got you. That has to do with the real history of Greek mythology from Curiosity of Epic the Musical. I'll take your random guesses. I mean, I just had never heard of I heard of it, but I never like knew what happened. So the only experience of this story I know about is from Epic the Musical. So when I saw this video pop up, I wanted to check it out. How are you trying to sail home and taunting the son of Poseidon? I mean, he didn't know he was the son of Poseidon, but he still shouldn't have. The fact that he gave him nobody as a name should like why would he decide to give him his real name later? That was dumb. So Poseidon made it so the ocean would never get him where he wanted to before 10 years. Oh, is that what it is? Were you in high school? We didn't cover this story in high school. We covered Greek mythology, but not the Odyssey.
War. Unknown to Odysseus, this would allow Polyphemus to give the name of his attacker to his father Poseidon, the god of the sea.
Yeah, and also, yeah, I didn't learn Greek mythology in high school. I learned it in middle school. And again, they didn't teach us this one.
His crew in his coming travels and wander the seas for 10 long years before he could set foot on his homeland.
Okay, so they didn't do that in Epic. Either that or I just didn't realize. Epic, he was just like, oh, we finna run the fade.
Unaware of the curse Poseidon had placed upon him, Odysseus and his crew would land on the floating island of Aeolia. After dining with his guests, King Aeolus, who ruled the island, would offer Odysseus a parting gift, a leather bag containing the power of the winds, which, if used with great precision, could speed his journey home. Setting sail once more, Odysseus would make use of the winds, with his homeland of Ithaca soon in sight. But as he neared the island's shores, his crew, believing the bag Aeolus had given him contained large sums of gold and silver, decided to take some.
That was stupid, because they said what the bag was for.
While Odysseus's back was turned.
It's the name of the video. The Odyssey explained in 25 minutes.
Once, blowing their ships back.
Yeah, I only
ocean,
learned about the actual Trojan horse.
Holding on for their lives, they would arrive at the island of Aeola once again. But this time, their arrival would not be met with the same generosity they had received before. For King Aeolus, knowing that only a curse from the gods could have brought Odysseus back to his island, would refuse to aid him any further.
He said, oh, you cursed? I ain't helping you no more.
To avoid the wrath of the gods.
I ain't about to deal with that.
Still unaware of Poseidon's curse, Odysseus would set sail once more. But just like his previous attempts to reach his homeland, this time would also hold misfortune.
The Laestrygonians?
Arriving at the harbour of Laestrygonia, Odysseus would send out 3 scouts to find food and the people of the town. But the scouts would soon realise they were not in a place of people at all, being chased by giants back to their ships. Bloodthirsty cannibals, the giant Laestrygonians would begin to devour the scouts, with them soon turning their attention to Odysseus's ships in the harbour.
Yeah, this part wasn't in
boulders,
the musical.
The Laestrygonians would destroy every ship bar one, with Odysseus barely making it out alive.
They were mentioned in the official live stream. They helped Poseidon kill Odysseus' crews. Okay. Circe!
Tired and depleted, Odysseus's only remaining ship.
It was, but fan animators never put them in. That's interesting.
Island of Aeaea, which was home to the beautiful witch Circe, daughter of the sun god Helios. Splitting his men into 2 groups, Odysseus would stay by his ship and set up camp, while the others searched the island for food. They would soon arrive at the house of Circe, where docile wolves and lions quivered at her feet. Inviting the men to dine with her, she would serve them a large cup of barley, cheese, and wine, but unknown to the men, there was one secret ingredient placed within. Having eaten the meal, the men would begin to fall asleep, but when they awoke, they were no longer in human form. Instead, they took the body of pigs. But one man, not having an appetite for food, had seen the events unfold, quickly running to Odysseus to tell him of the fate of
this
his
guy
crew.
lean in it.
Hearing the news, Odysseus immediately set off to rescue his men, but along the way, he was stopped by the messenger god Hermes, who had come to aid him. Giving Odysseus Molly, a magic herb, Hermes would tell him to approach Circe and begin to dine with her, surprising the witch when he remained in human form. Drawing his sword, he stood up and threatened to kill Circe unless she transformed his crew back into humans. With the sword at her throat, Circe would quickly agree, with the pigs at her feet transforming back into men. So impressed by Odysseus's heroics, Circe would invite him to her bedchamber,
She said, hey,
with the two having a son together named Telegonus, remaining on the island.
Whoa. Okay. So first of all, hold up. First of all, I was gonna say trying to kill the daughter of the son's crazy work. So I thought it was gonna be like, all right, give me back my men. And then from what I had heard, it was gonna be like, oh yeah, well, we gotta get in this bedroom first if you want your men back. Nah, she was actually like, oh shit, you finna kill me? Okay, I'll switch her back. But I kind of like that. Get in this bedchamber real quick. And they popped the kid out. They run that back. Who?
Transforming back into men. So impressed by Odysseus's heroics, Circe would invite him to her bedchamber, with the two having a son together named Telegonus. Remaining on the island for a whole year, Odysseus decided it was time to leave, but as he began to set sail, Circe would advise him to visit the underworld, where the prophet Tiresias could advise him on how to survive the many trials that awaited him at sea.
I was told he was coerced. Odysseus is ran through by the time he gets home. Yeah, I was just about to say, why he got teleprompter-ass names?
Advice, Odysseus would
for his
west
kids
to the edge of the world, where an entrance to the underworld was located. Completing a ritual sacrifice at the entrance, Odysseus would summon the spirits of the dead, where the blind prophet Tiresias would appear. He warned that Odysseus and his men would soon find themselves on the island of the sun god Helios, and that they should refrain from eating his cattle if they wanted to make it home alive. If, however, they harmed the cattle in any way, then death would follow. Thanking the prophet, Odysseus would leave in his ship, determined that when the time
So he already
came,
warned him about
no
that
man
shit.
would touch the sun god's cattle. But soon after setting sail, Odysseus and his men would begin to hear a beautiful melody, for his ship was passing the home of the sirens, irresistible creatures that enticed sailors to their death with their bewitching songs. However, this time Odysseus had come prepared. Remembering the advice that Circe had given him, he would instruct his crew to plug their ears with beeswax, so they could not be seduced by the siren's call. But Odysseus, wanting to be the first man to hear the song and survive, would not plug his ears with wax, instead asking his...
Because I remember for a little bit on TikTok, when I started getting like epic stuff on my For You page, like there's people making jokes about like how for this song, how it kind of seemed like if he had plugged his ears, then whenever he's like singing with the siren, he would probably say his verse. Like he would sing his verse and then like start squinting to try to read the lips of the siren real quick to see what she's saying, and they'd be like, all right, let me go back to my verse. So like people just kept making jokes about that, but nah, it seemed like he didn't plug his ears.
Plug their ears with beeswax, so they could not be seduced by the siren's call. But Odysseus, wanting to be the first man to hear the song and survive,
that's actually crazy,
plug his ears with wax, instead asking his crew to bind him to the ship's mast. And so, as the ship passed the siren's home, and their songs grew louder and louder, Odysseus would begin to struggle. Drawn to the sound with every fibre of his being, he would plead with his men to let him go, but no one would answer his call as the wax continued to.
He said, "Let me out, I'm bricked. Let me jump in the water."
Odysseus would be set free, having been the first man to survive the siren's call. But unknown to him, the sirens were fated to die if a mortal ever resisted their enchanting song, with each of them taking...
Oh, okay, because I was literally just about to say, like, okay, so in this one, they didn't just go and murder all of the sirens, but nah, it sounded like they about to die just because he survived. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Don't ask me how I just got a $20 order on DoorDash for less than $5. Yo, I wish that were me. Like most Greek heroes, one of his flaws is his ego. Yeah, they really just be like, yo, I'm like that, and then they keep on they like that until something happens and they get fucked over. He said, I'm built different. Tie me up to this pole, and I'm gonna be the first man to make it back without dying from that shit. I'm gonna tell y'all my feats when we get back. I'm calling my crew, let me dive in. I'm talking about in it.
Their own life as his ship sailed into the horizon. If you love art as much as us and are captivated by the beauty of some of the pieces you have already seen in this video, then you are going to love today's sponsor.
Scylla and Charybdis. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. So, no free promo. I'm not gonna lie, y'all. Here's a sponsor. Sub to Kishin's YouTube. Exactly. Go subscribe. We at 150. We just hit that. Go ahead and shoot that up. If you watching this and you enjoying the reaction, then go ahead and subscribe. If you ain't seen my original epic reaction, that's up on the channel as well. Go peep that. I will say, so Scylla, right? I still have not put my tier list video on YouTube yet. I still have to edit that. However, I'm gonna tell y'all right now that like what I'm probably gonna do for that video is put out the video, but at the end put out an updated tier list of how I feel about the songs now that some time has passed and I've listened to them more, because I don't think I had Scylla's song very high, but now that's actually like, that's one of my favorites low-key. That Scylla song just went hard, bruh. That shit went hard. And I realized that I was gonna have to probably update the tier list when one day I was at work and I was like, you know what? Let me just play the whole song, the whole musical, because you know it's literally in order, and it said that shit was like 2 hours to some change, right? So I was like, fuck it, let me just play it during my shift. And then like that's when it kind of sunk that like, yo, some of these songs, a lot of these songs are better than I was saying that original tier list. Cause damn. But yeah, I just found that funny. What's good, Maya? Welcome in. How you doing?
As the next day dawned, Odysseus had a difficult decision to make, for Circe, using her magic, had warned him of the dangers that lay ahead when he came across a narrow pass. On each side would lay incredible danger, with the right home to Scylla, a giant six-headed sea monster, and the left home to Cabderus, a whirlpool that consumed anything that came near.
That's not how it's spelled.
Circe's advice yet again, Odysseus would head towards Scylla, for while the monster would take 6 of his men, it was a price he was willing to pay, as Cabderus would take his entire ship. And so, with a heavy heart, he would direct his men towards the cliff face, where Scylla lay in wait. As the ship passed, 6 heads would swoop down from above, each taking a sailor, who screamed as they were consumed by the beast. But with a great storm on the horizon, they had no time to mourn their companions, with them soon stopping on the island
going the wrong way
Thrinacia.
still. So Krallis in the open arms. Cattle of the sun.
Thrinacia was
Here they
home to the
go.
cattle of the sun god Helios, cattle that Odysseus had been warned not to consume by the prophet Tiresias in the underworld. But despite Odysseus instructing his men not to touch the cattle, it would not be easy for them to follow his orders, as the storm had kept them stranded on the island for nearly a month. With their food supplies all but gone, the crew on the brink of starvation.
Look how scared that cow
would wait
looks.
for
Look at his
Odysseus
face
to fall
above me.
asleep,
Oh my
killing
god.
all
He's
the
like, oh,
cattle and
they're
roasting
gonna kill
the meat
me.
to enjoy amongst themselves. When Odysseus awoke the next morning, he would fall to his knees in despair, shaking his head in disbelief at the foolishness of his crew.
So the crew didn't press him
However,
about
although
the sacrifices
the crew had
this
ignored
time.
his orders, the storm had now calmed, with them setting off to sea once again. But their crime had not gone unnoticed, with the sun god Helios complaining to Zeus, the king of the gods, about the slaughter of his
Hey, they
cattle.
killed my cows!
Furious, Zeus would strike Odysseus' ship with a great thunderbolt, tearing it in half, with all the crew drowning bar one. For as fate predicted, Poseidon's
Interesting.
curse had come to pass.
So, yeah, and unlike Epic, this time it was like Helios was like, hey, they killed my cows! And then Zeus was like, oh shit, alright, I got you, bruh. Let me just toss a little thunderbolt down there. We'll get this sorted out. He threw that shit down there, everybody just died. Except you know, Odie, he survived. Whereas like in Epic, it was more like he came down and was like, oh, you gotta make a choice. Which I feel like that could still be kinda like understandable in the sense that these Greek gods like to just mess with people and see what happened. But yeah, and then that it was a choice. But this time he was just probably sitting there laying back, just threw a little thunderbolt down there, and it was like, all right, there you go, Helios, go, leave me alone. There were two options that sucked versus what seemed like one terrible option just not going on. Yo, let's go, Vezi. Now listen up, soldier. I'm gonna say something, I'm gonna say it once. Life is like a door. Never trust a cow because the sun can't swim. Huh? You get it? See, I'm just dumb. Still fucked up. His crew in the Epic was perfectly fine not going home. Odysseus definitely sucks sometimes, but his crew, man, they be making shit so much worse. Yeah, I mean, again, I didn't see, like, again, the like Epic the musical didn't have them, they weren't cursed in Epic. But in Epic, it was like, these dumbass crew members literally, like, not only did they deceive him by opening the bag because they're stupid, but they literally tied him up to make sure that he wouldn't get up and stop them. That shit is crazy. And then they could have been home. They could have been home. And then it's just like, they over here, he said, this time, see, and then unlike Epic, the whole thing with the Zeus just happened. And it was like, damn, right? But this time, no, the prophet or whatever literally told like Odie, like, hey, when you get there, do not eat the cows because y'all will die. He's like, okay, bet. He tells this to the crew. Hey, don't touch the cows or we will die. And they touch them anyway. Y'all deserve to die. What the hell? Yeah, it is very simple instructions. Y'all talking about musicals? Yeah, we're watching the Odyssey explained because I watched Epic. You gonna just assume that Helios told Zeus to take care of him? Man, that shit. Well, Odie the only one alive here. Again, it's their fault. They shouldn't have. It's cool that he's the only one that survived because he was the only one that was trying to listen.
With only Odysseus having survived the carnage, with him clinging to the broken remains of his ship. For 9 days and nights he would drift across the vast ocean, but on the 10th day he would wash up on the island of the goddess Calypso.
Calypso. Yeah, thank you for the follow. Woman in the Sky Village, hope you find a cozy comfort here. Now let's see what's going on over here.
Upon rescuing Odysseus from the shore, Calypso, the daughter of the Titan Atlas, would fall in love with him, asking if he'd stay on the island with her forever, even offering to make him immortal. But Odysseus, longing to see his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus, would reject her advances.
What about Circe and your other
insisting
teleprompter
that he
son?
wanted to leave. However, Calypso,
telecommunications.
insulted by his rejection, would keep Odysseus captive on the island for the next 7 years, being forced to lie with the goddess.
Look at him, he's like,
Odysseus
oh
would
my
spend
god,
every
bro.
night crying on the shore,
I want to go home.
wishing to see his wife and son once again. But high on Mount Olympus, the goddess Athena, having supported Odysseus since the Trojan War, would look down upon him with sadness in her heart, until one day she could not stand by any longer. Begging Zeus to finally allow Odysseus to return home, Athena would make her case, with Zeus ordering Calypso to set him free. Reluctantly,
Yeah, there weren't no
Calypso
god
would agree,
games.
helping Odysseus to build a raft to sail home. But as he was nearing his homeland, Poseidon would hear of Odysseus's escape, conjuring a storm to destroy his raft. Barely surviving,
He said, "Nah, you ain't going
Odysseus would
home."
manage to swim to the island of Syria, where he would stumble onto the shore completely naked, before falling asleep.
Butt ass naked on the shore. Okay, I don't remember this part.
The island of Syria was home to the Phaeacians, ruled by King Alcinous and Queen Arete. The day after Odysseus's arrival, their daughter Nausicaa would go down to the sea with her maids to wash their clothes, only to find Odysseus standing naked on the shore.
So who is butt ass naked
Shocked by
man?
the sight of a naked man, her maids would run away screaming in terror. But Nausicaa, given courage and being prompted by Athena, would stand her ground. Giving Odysseus some clothes, Nausicaa would take him back to her palace, where she would introduce him to her parents. Inviting the stranger inside, the king and queen would ask Odysseus to dine with them before enjoying entertainment provided by Demodocus the poet, who was known for his songs inspired by the gods. As the night unfolded, the king would ask Odysseus to reveal his name and story, but Odysseus, reluctant to give his name after it had led to Poseidon's curse, would try to avoid the question, instead talking of the great sights he had seen on his travels. After a great feast, Demodocus would begin to play his beautiful tunes, singing of the gods of Olympus, but soon the poet's attention would turn to the tale of Troy. He would sing of its many heroes, of Achilles and Agamemnon, and of the famous Odysseus, the maker of the wooden horse and the most cunning of the Greeks. Awed by the tale of the Trojan horse, of how a man so intelligent had
So they
managed
knew
to
about his, they
outwit
knew
the
about his
Trojans,
feats.
the crowd would begin to cheer, but Odysseus, thinking only of the many friends he had lost, would grab his robe and begin to weep, wiping the tears from his eyes. However, the king, hearing Odysseus sobbing, would become suspicious, asking for the man's identity. Overwhelmed that his tale was being told across the land, and mesmerized by the poet's beautiful singing, he would reveal that his name was Odysseus, the famous hero of the Trojan War. But rather than returning home after the conflict,
He's like, I'm Odysseus,
would explain that
but all
he'd
my
been
friends are
wandering
dead.
the ocean for 10 long years,
Wish me
with
to that
every
ass.
attempt to reach his homeland having ended in tragedy. Amazed by the story and honoured to have such a great hero in their midst, the king and queen would do everything they could to help him. The next morning, Odysseus would awake to find a ship in the harbour, loaded with gold and silver, and a crew ready to help him.
Damn,
return home.
okay. Yo, they set him
Setting sail,
right.
Odysseus would thank the king and queen, with his eyes now set firmly
That's what's
upon
up, though.
his homeland.
He's like, yo, damn, that's fucking crazy, bro. Look, I got you. He wake up first thing in the morning, like, hey, look, good morning. I got you some breakfast. I got you a new ship. You got some silver and gold in that shit, and you got a new crew. All right, I wish you the best of luck. That they a real one for that.
20 years after leaving home, Odysseus would finally set foot on Ithaca, ready to see his wife
He's
and
back.
son once again. But Athena, knowing that his homeland was not as he had left it, would warn Odysseus of the dangers that waited in his palace. Transforming him into an old beggar, Athena made sure that Odysseus would enter his home in disguise. For his wife Penelope, having been alone for 20 years, was expected to remarry, with suitors from far and wide coming to win her
20 years
hand.
is nuts. I know,
Over
right?
100 of them now infested Odysseus's palace.
She
eating
was
his
loyal,
food
unlike
and wearing
Odysseus.
his clothes. Although throughout it all, Penelope had remained faithful, never giving up hope that her husband would return. Devising a cunning plan to avoid marriage, Penelope had stalled her many suitors for years, weaving a burial garment for Odysseus's father, promising that she would choose a new...
All he had to do was not taunt Polyphemus. You know, it's crazy too, because it's like that one thing just caused a chain reaction of like fucking pain and suffering. That one thing. Because none of the rest of this story would have happened if he didn't do that one thing. If he just stayed nobody.
new husband when it was finished.
It's that ego.
But every night, as the garment neared completion, she would secretly undo all her work, with the deception lasting for 3 years before it was uncovered. With her now
Wait, let me run that back.
had stalled her many suitors for years. He had remained faithful, never giving up hope that her husband would return. Devising a cunning plan to avoid marriage, Penelope had stalled her many suitors for years, weaving a burial garment for Odysseus's father, promising that she would choose a new husband when it was finished. But every night, as the garment neared completion, she would secretly undo all her work, with the deception lasting for 3 years.
How would they just
before it
fall
was
for that?
uncovered, with her now being forced to choose a suitor. But unknown to Penelope, Odysseus would soon be by her side. Making his way to the palace, he would first stop at the house of his most loyal servant Eumaeus. Happy to see his king once again, Eumaeus would offer Odysseus food and wine, while pledging to help him reclaim his home. It would not be long before another would join them, for Odysseus's son Telemachus had just arrived home from his travels after searching for his father for many months. Making his way up to the palace, Telemachus would see Eumaeus dining with a stranger, and hungry after his long voyage, would ask his friend if he could join for dinner. But Eumaeus, knowing the beggar's true identity, would seek to give the two some time together, leaving to let Penelope know that her son had returned. With Eumaeus now gone, Athena would use her magic to transform the old beggar back into Odysseus in all his glory. Telemachus could not believe his eyes and would begin to weep, having been reunited with his father after all this time. Dropping to his knees,
So the order of
Telemachus
events
would
is a little
embrace
bit
his
different.
father with open arms, but their reunion would have to wait, as for now, Odysseus would have to deal with the suitors that infested his home. Disguising himself as a beggar once again, Odysseus would enter the palace, only to discover that Penelope had set up a competition to choose her next husband. She had declared that she would marry the man who could shoot an arrow through a row of 12 axe heads, with every suitor in the land having joined the competition. But there would be one condition, that each suitor must use Odysseus's great bow that had been left behind at the palace. It was another of Penelope's cunning tricks, as one after another, every suitor would take their turn, each unable to even string the bow. After every man had failed, Odysseus, still disguised as a beggar, would ask for an attempt, with the whole palace howling with laughter. But they would soon fall quiet, for Odysseus would string the bow with ease, taking aim and shooting an arrow that sailed through all 12 axes with perfect precision.
Okay.
But having seen the damage done to his home, Odysseus could not forgive the suitors. Turning the bow upon them, Odysseus would begin to fire,
Oh, wow.
striking them down one by one. Panicked, the suitors would go
Why
to
they
grab
naked?
their weapons, but no matter how hard they looked, they could not be found, as Telemachus had hid their weapons while the competition was underway. With
Okay, so so he was like, he showed up as the old man, and then he was like, oh nah, y'all been on some fun shit. He just starts killing them. Cause like I know in Epic we know like why like he was like ready to just kill them on sight, right? But this, it seems like he just decided to do it because he didn't like the state of the country or something. He just was like, oh nah, I ain't fucking with y'all. Y'all gotta die. Like that's kind of crazy. They weren't even evil Epic. He was just mad they were bad. Yeah, he was just. They were harassing and trying to marry his wife for 20 years. Oh, so it's just like, oh, I know y'all been wanting her, so y'all gonna die. Go back to my house, and you walked in with your shoes on. It starts blasting. Is there just literally set up a house in his palace? Oh, okay. And then I see, like, in this case, like, then since he had already met up with his son, then his son went and, like, hid all the weapons. Whereas, like, in Epic, it was just like, oh no, I did all that myself.
Eumaeus then joining Telemachus and Odysseus, they would begin to attack the suitors, not stopping until they had all been killed. With the bodies of the suitors now laying dead at his feet, Odysseus had completed his final task. The only thing left to do was to reunite with his wife, with his undying love for her being the only thing that had fueled his journey home. Recognizing her husband and overwhelmed with emotion, Penelope would embrace Odysseus, a moment she had spent 20 long and faithful years waiting for, letting out a sigh of relief.
So he ain't gonna tell her about what's it. You wait.
But his wife would have.
Oh wait. Okay, hold on. I just remembered. So first of all, I was gonna crack a joke like, oh, you ain't gonna tell her about Cersei and your other son, your other baby mama. But then I was like, wait a minute. I thought y'all said that. I thought it was said before that like he did cheat with Calypso as well. But when we just watched just now, he didn't cheat. He didn't mess with Calypso. He was just sad and depressed until he got saved by Athena and Zeus. So did that actually not happen?
One question for him, asking where he had been after all this time. With a smile on his face and
depends on the
tears
version
in
you
his
read.
eyes, he would reply with one simple line: "Where do I begin?"
Yeah, where you been? Look, it's been a long story. Okay. Yeah, because everybody was making it seem like that was the case, but this one didn't even bring it up. He did cheat on Cersei for sure, though, it seems, or cheat with Cersei. Like, does he just never tell her, hey, I went and I had another kid? Like, does his kid come back later? Like, that would be crazy. He grew up and went to go meet him. Also, it seems like the same person made a vid on the Iliad. The entire story of the Trojan War explained. Do y'all want to watch that? Telemachus has a whole demigod half brother. Yeah, that's crazy. That shit just doesn't ever come back up. Which I've heard that Odysseus doesn't have a good ending, but I don't really know what story is after the Odyssey. If you want to know what happens to Odysseus after his other son kills him, I was like, is he ever gonna show? So he shows up and he's like, "Where you been at? You never came back with the milk," and then just offs him. That son also goes on to marry Penelope.